Alright, so, you know the drill. It's late, confused as hell, got a sore throat. The usual that every human being experiences. Today, if I don't go off the rails and ramble about something as I did with the food video, which if you're listening to this and you haven't watched the video I put out about food and fantasy, please God, go listen to it. I think it's my best one and it has the least views. And then the HFY one is my most popular one and it has an audio error like 40 minutes in that lasts for like 20 minutes, which fucking it hurts my soul to know that, but I got off topic immediately. That's a phenomenal sign for what's to come. This is also another one where I got a person in the background, a different person. I have more than one friend, if you could believe it. Um, we're going to be talking about probably uh factions in like stories. Like as per usual, most of what I say will be focused on like a fantastical aspect because I predominantly read fantasy. Cue later on me drawing parallels to like Warhammer or something in cyberpunk or steampunk, completely undercutting the point I'm making. But the bulk of what I read is like fantasy, and also the bulk of what I read is stuff I can find online. Whether or not that means it's free or pirated is a whole different conversation. Uh, but whatever I say will be like fantasy guilds and shit like that. Or a video game analogy, because we're all gamers here. It's gamers derogatory, of course, not gamers affectionate. Uh, Also, if I remember, the checklist will be in the description. You can go ahead and pop that open and see like a little checklist of what I might say. So, factions, right? Uh, Now I could go through this in order, this list, or I could pick one of them and start talking about it. I'll pick this one. Does your story need it? That's a pretty good like thing to ask yourself when you're considering to add like a faction or a group into your story. Is it necessary? On one hand, it can really help flesh out your world and make it feel more lived in. If there are these groups that are like vying to have some sort of effect on the wider world or interact with one another or things of that nature. On the other hand, it can really chew up game time and really just feel tacked on, you know. Uh, Let me think of an example of something that feels tacked on. Uh, okay, no offense. I love the Stalker series. Stalker Clear Sky, which I have not played. I've only played Gamma because it is free. Even though I really do like Stalker and it's not that expensive. But I refuse to buy things. Clear Sky has an issue where a lot of it is tied to the faction system. Now, the Stalker faction system is quite, relatively speaking, other video game faction systems. Well, that's another one. Um, it's quite more robust than other faction systems. They actually kind of interact with one another more. Well, it's more of a symptom of Stalker's wider A life as a whole, as opposed to Stalker 2's A life, which is not very good. Still one of my sticking points with that game. Let factions actually like interact with each other beyond hating one another, and they do hate one another, or at least some factions do. But some factions have more interaction with one another in that manner. Potential spoilers, maybe, for this fucking several decades old game. In Clear Sky are more sneaky, breaky scientist guys. Part of the game is like you infiltrate another faction, like covertly, and do some reconnaissance and shit for Clear Sky, and you gotta do work for them, which kind of just makes you start at the bottom of the totem pole again midway through the story, and it feels super tacked on and like it was there to pad out game time, which is mega lame. However, something like, aw man, I immediately forgot what I was gonna say. Uh, damn it, I had two games in mind actually. One of them was, of course, Stalker, which is still not as a whole bad. I'll talk about like Gamma and shit later, even though Gamma's not official, but I'll talk about Gamma and shit later. Ah, man, add another fucking S. Stalker and fuck. I'm forgetting the games I like. Have I have I visited the rock that makes you old and become old? The beach that makes you old? It's literally make you that old, mom. And you like come back like 20 years older. I'll remember it later. Or will I? Man. Do I have it downloaded? Let me actually really quickly. We had again more proof I never script this shit. Is Fallout. What the fuck? That's gonna bother me. Whatever. Um, insert example of great faction system here. Fuck me. Um, but there are there's dozens of points you can draw from. But you like I mentioned, then cut myself off immediately. Your story doesn't always immediately or at all need any form of faction system or group system as a whole, right? Now, sometimes it adds credence to your story, makes it more in depth, makes it more believable, it gives your main character something to like work with, fiddle with, actually hands-on interact with. Or it could just bog down runtime and make your raiders hate it. Now, here's a good thing that I'll mention right now and probably fail to remember and mention anytime in the future. If you have like an editor or something, that's great. If you're like in the fanfic scene and you have a beta reader, like a bitch. Uh, none of my stuff gets beta read. Like a bitch, nobody should ever beta read, and there's a reason no beta, we die like men is a popular tag. Then that's actually a good thing. So that way your reader can give you some fucking like feedback on whether or not it's a good or bad idea to insert X thing in. However, to curb to here's a tip, kids, that I actually have not used myself, so I don't know how effective it is. Also, you're not kids. I refuse to believe kids would listen to this shit. Here's a tip, young ones. That sounds better, kinda. Uh, if you feel like someone's gonna complain about your shitty writing style, just throw in "dead dove do not eat." Therefore, you are free from all criticism. It's a perfect plan. That can surely not go wrong. You see, my listener even agrees with me. I say lying to you. Um, anyway, you if you have someone to like read over your story and give you feedback, please feel like God, listen to them. However, you're a true Giga Chad. You're a real Sigma, or whatever the fuck kids say nowadays, and would never use a beta reader like some sort of bitch. And just go with gut feeling. So, how do you gutly feel whether or not something is good for your story? I mentioned before, kill your darlings. Now, that sounds like I'm advocating for infanticide, or patricide, or matricide, or fratricide. I don't think it's sororicide, but if that is a word, or sororicide. Um, is there one for killing your cousins and uncles? Anyway, it might sound like I'm advocating for that, or other forms of homicide, or even suicide. Who knows? Maybe you really fucking love yourself. But kill your darlings refers to, in the writing space, roughly, if you have a really cool idea for a story, and then you try to put it in your current story, and then you find yourself cutting out a bunch of screen time from other stuff to focus on it, or having to reshape the plot in a major way to insert it in, or it feels clunky and you can't find like a good place to organically introduce this element into your story, then don't. Then simply don't. Something I forget myself a couple of times, it's okay to leave things on the cutting room floor, because that means you can sweep it up later and put it in something else, just like they do at hair salons, where like you donate your hair to a child who has cancer or something. Personally, I would never. My friends can attest to this. My hair reaches my mid back and a little bit lower. If that kid didn't want to be bald, they shouldn't have gotten cancer. And I'll stand by that. Like, I had a tumor, and then I got it dealt with. It is just that easy, unironically. Um, So if you find yourself feeling like, so if you, oh man, that was really funny to me for some reason. So if you find yourself thinking, oh man, this idea is great, I just can't seem to make it fit, get rid of it. Full stop. So I'm drinking a lot of water. So, and my body hates it. Phenomenal. The normal everyday human experience of your body rejecting basic needs. Like again, not every story is going to need it, but some stories that will need it more than others is admittedly not fantasy. Fantasy doesn't need guilds. It doesn't need, outside of your adventuring party, it doesn't need a wide cast of characters to interact with. Cyberpunk, however, despite not being my go-to choice, given that most of it is kind of built on the idea of, I was about to call it fucking hive gangs. I got Necromunda on the mind because Necromunda actually gives a shit about its own lore, unlike wider Warhammer as a whole. Warhammer's another great point for this, of like the different houses actually interact with one another and have lore that builds upon each other. Shout out House Cawdor, by the way. But Cyberpunk as a whole is kind of built around gangers and like gang warfare in the future. And all sorts of like, I was about to call it archaeotech. I'm fucking thinking about Necromunda, holy shit. Of like the whole body augmentation and how that can be like, again, allegory for ableism, etc. But like a lot of cyberpunk focuses on gangs and gang warfare as like a thing, crime in general, right? Having these untouchable elites, like the corpos and shit, or just, more powerful, basically PMC gangers. That is a good sort of story to have factions, or in this case, gangs, literally, matter more in your tales. If you want to write a ganger focused story, Cyberpunk is a great place to do it because it's kind of built around that whole idea. Um, let me, so I don't actually have this written down. What can be some potential factions in your story? Well, there's no one faction fits all, right? You kind of need, it's kind of tailored to all of your stories and the goings on within it. Um, does your story need it? No. But if your story does need it, or you just think it would actually fit, because sometimes it doesn't need it, sometimes it doesn't not need it, but it could just be thrown in, and organically, bit that matters the most. And if so, you can decide to yourself, all right, time for a faction. Now, uh, what would be their purpose? It is different from story to story. This is the first point. What is their purpose in story? You could decide they are, leaning back into fantasy again, they are a form of guild. Now, I mentioned in the food video for all of you, let me quickly check my channel. As egotistical as that sounds, uh, for how many people saw it, because I want to call the exact number at the time of recording this. No, I'm not bitter. That day I was bitter, however, for my players not showing up. If you are one of the 5 people who saw that video, you would know I mentioned like how guilds kind of function, and historically speaking. Once again, I'll mention your story does not need to be historically accurate. This is fantasy, or better categorized as fiction as a whole. You need not be beholden to that which happened ages ago. Now, if you're doing like a fantasy thing and you have a guild aspect going on, keep in mind guilds were not there for the individual's protection outside of protection from monopolies or aggressive competition. A guild was there to serve the wider interests of economics as a whole. A farmers' guild was not there to keep the workers' rights of the farmers, it was there to mandate how much the farmer could sell. Otherwise, you would have farmers undercutting each other to the point where it would cause some pretty shaky economic shocks that would ripple throughout the entire city and cause some devastation. Which means, because the guild kind of has a say on this major industry, they have a lot of say, fucking period. Quick side note. Uh, actually discussing the thing I'm talking about, side note, rarely seen around these parts. given how fucking schizophrenic this shit can be. No offense to my schizos out there, I'm sure you're awesome people. However, uh, how did you know to get tested? Please tell me in the comments. I'm a little bit worried. Not even with just this shit that I do, just kind of in general. It would explain some things. I know that I immediately distracted myself. Um, a place to put factions, right? Is not in the rural areas of your store. Like if you're adventuring parties moving from place to place, there wouldn't just be factions in the woods outside of like some bandit gangs, right? A faction would be in a city, not a town, not a village, a city, which is a very important thing to keep in mind. Where there is nobility, plural, there would be guilds. Oftentimes nobility would run the guilds, but not always. And in fact, sometimes the guilds not ran by nobles were more ruthless than the nobles themselves. Because again, guilds had a major fucking say in everything because they were kind of a tax that the people paid. The farmers would pay their fucking guild tax even if they weren't really officially a part of it. Which means the sheer amount of wealth they could accrue and how much they could dictate with those beneath them meant that they could buy out guards and PMCs and bodyguards and be practically fucking untouchable to the most people because nobody wants to talk to the Swedish man in half plate wielding a halberd or a billhook or an axe or a sword in um or a warhammer neither. Again, blunt weaponry, superior to bladed weaponry, and I will stand by this until the day I die. There's a reason every tribe has unique clubs, whereas they don't have unique spears or knives. Well, actually, they do have unique knives. I forget their name, but they were a New Zealand, I believe, tribe, and they had like a knife with a rounded edge to it. It was very interesting. They carved their tools out of jade, if that recognizes the tribe in your name. They were very cool to learn about. I've sadly forgotten their name though. Anyway, keep in mind where you're putting your factions because that also, again, you shouldn't be beholden to realism. However, sometimes it is very important. If your faction doesn't feel like it could realistically sustain itself or be brought into being in an organic way, it feels bad and you should not put it in your story. So a farmer's yield is a rational, though maybe not reasonable depending on your convictions. I think it's kind of reasonable, but still, is a rational and reasonable, um, uh, like end goal for keeping economic peace for like farming purposes. And so you get what I'm trying to say. Their purpose in the story. You shouldn't. Here am I talking down to you, the lowly aeon that you are. I'm going to make broad claims and say you shouldn't do X. Keep in mind you can. However, the consequences are your own. I'm sure you can do it right, he says, lying to your face. Not that I'm preying on your downfall. Like that guy just said, like that gal just said, rather. Always remember the consequences of your actions. It is very fucking important to recognize, presumably, you're not writing for yourself, you're writing for an audience. This is especially true when you're running a D&D game. Looks at RPG horror stories. Even I gotta remind myself. Or otherwise everything would be mega trapped. Like, kill you trapped. But that's no fun, so I don't do that. Now even for me, I don't derive pleasure from that. Glances around suspiciously. Welp. Anyway, um, keep in mind their purpose in the story. Now, you shouldn't really just throw factions in there belligerently, blindly, with no real rhyme or reason, right? Your characters should have something to do with them, or maybe even a history with like a leader of a faction. Or perhaps they're going against the will of a faction for some undisclosed nebulous reason that's within your plot, whatever. Factions just kind of being there, however, feels kind of lame. So in Stalker, depending on your convictions of how strongly a faction system should be present, in Stalker, again, I've only played Gamma, you, um, in Gamma specifically, you pledge yourself to a faction. I say it like that before you start up the game. You pick your starting faction. Any Loner brothers out there? I picked Loner because Loner's the all-arounder. You pick your faction, and with as a result of your choice, you have predetermined allies and enemies. For example, loners are friendly with loners, duty, ecologists, trying to remember, freedom, and clear sky. They're natural enemies with bandits, renegades, which are another kind of bandit, mercs, military, who's hostile to most anybody, and monolith and sin and unsig, who are hostile to everyone, right? So already there's pre-established like faction relations, which are hard set, and it does kind of come into play with the missions you take from rando stalkers. Because rando stalkers still have work for you, even if they're not important people. They could be anything from give me two steel wool pads and I'll give you a couple hundred rubles to give me 20 monolith patches and I will give you coordinate stash coordinates, some ammo, and booze, right? I'm just throwing out some random shit. Loopholes are randomized, but they're weighted, so it's kind of worth it. Anyway, point I'm vaguely trying to make here is I don't know if it's true, but I get the feeling, though it's probably not true if you look in the files, that factions have different wants. I know they absolutely do have some different wants, particularly with what patches they want. Um, every time you kill a faction stalker, right? Or every stalker has a faction, but every time you kill a stalker, you can loot their body and get a patch to represent one kill from them, right? And sometimes there's missions to turn in X number of patches for a reward. It's a cool like in-lore thing of like, oh yeah, a stalker with a bunch of patches not related to their faction is probably like a seasoned immersive, like a seasoned veteran who knows what they're doing, right? That's kind of cool, like when you think about it. But gives each faction has pre-established relations with one another, patches they want can vary. Um, a duty member might want freedom patches, and freedom might want duty. But you, as a loner, might not want to kill either because you're thinking to yourself, well, that's a potential ally I make an enemy of, right? I could lose relations with these guys. I don't know the ins and outs of gamer relations. I don't know how high you need to be to get with a murder if you even can. But when I play loner, I just stick to my people. I kill the people I don't like and turn in missions as I can. But the point I'm making is, why not have something similar to that with your factions? They should absolutely have distinctive wants and needs, right? Or at least fucking hate each other, and probably for a good reason, i.e., duty see the zone as a danger to humanity with it slowly growing every day, seeing the mutants as the genuine threat that they are to human civilization, anomalies as something dangerous, uncontained that must be studied, whereas freedom, uh, fucking suck and I hate them. Uh, whereas freedom see it, the zone as like some sort of gift to the world that people should be free to come into the zone, do as they please. Bear in mind, freedom are allied with bandits, duty or not. The choice is clear. Not that I'm biased or anything, but, fuck freedom. Not that I'm like pro duty or anything. Honestly, I'd kind of want to vibe with ecologists because they're just chilling in the zone studying shit. Or Clear Sky because they're ecologists with guns. Well, ecologists have guns too, but Clear Sky are more militant, whatever. Or I would have allied with Clear Sky if they didn't fucking turn to mono. Fuck you, Monolith. Message to all Monolith. Kill yourself. The sea consciousness wants it. Um, I got way off track. The fuck was I talking about? Ah man, here it goes. The slow descent. I was probably talking about like faction relations to one another. As I bounce topic once more. Factions should absolutely have, if not history with one another, like the Necromunda gangers do. They gave Necromunda gangers lore. Why do other Xenos not get lore? Why does Ferris Manus have no lore? Also, fuck GW. Um, Read up on their latest blunder. The funny part is despite this video getting older, that topic will stay relevant. How upsetting. Anyway, uh, get I call them gangers again. Different factions absolutely have relations with one another, especially a history, right? Whether or not they be friendly or negative is dependent on various things. Um, they should have close allies, distant allies, close enemies, kind of I don't care about you enemies, and neutralities. And they should absolutely have opinions on the goings on in your world. Now, I've seen this before, um, like story Bibles, I think they're called. People do a thing where they write out how different characters in the world feel about X top. You've seen the writing advice that I personally have never taken. Oh, well, would you look at that? My friend went to bed and I'm alone now. It's time to say various slurs loudly into the microphone. No, don't worry, I won't. Or so he claims. I actually won't. Um, and then I got distracted. How dare you leave me? That's fine. It's, again, I do these late night. Well, early morning. It's 12. Mm, remembered. So, also remembered, get up, move around, stretch your fucking legs, let the blood flow. Otherwise, you can have, like, leg issues and back issues and shit. Straighten your posture. Shrimp check. Anyway, I've seen the advice, that I do not take personally, of what are they called? Story Bibles and shit like that. People will take, like, unplug my laptop. I don't want the fucking battery to get damaged. People will take pieces of paper or like Google Docs and shit and write out various things about various characters and like animals and shit. Um, I've seen the like write down 20 things about your character that the reader will never know, like shit like their opinion on fucking, I don't know, forests or like proper topiary preservation, shit like that. Um, if you need to, he says, never having done it himself, you can absolutely go ahead and do this for an entire faction, and you might want to organize everything like a ledger. Or you could also release it on the side as like a cool in-universe, like from the desks of blank, right? As like an in-universe like collection of things. Or if you'd like, take this idea and fucking run with it, I guess. Stylize it after the collapse of your world as like a ruined, as like a scavenger picks apart the bones of an old society and paints a dreamy picture in their mind of what it might have looked like, how these factions might have interacted with one another. It can be scarily accurate, even though it will never be realistically, for like the sake of the story, because that's kind of fun, isn't it? There's an idea you can fucking steal. You thieves, I say, stealing half the shit I do. What the fuck was it? It was Stalker and... I'm still thinking about it, by the way. It wasn't an acronym, the second one. I think it was a video game. What fucking games do I play? God. Whatever. It's still in the back of my fucking brain. It's pissing me off now. I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna think. I'm back. If you're curious, no, I don't know what. I still have no fucking clue what it is, and I'm actually mad about it. Like, actually mad about it. God fucking damn it. And I forgot my original fucking point. God. Whatever. Um, let's pick this topic, aesthetics. So, the most important thing, beyond anything I've said it before, about designing a faction is what they look like, how they speak, and their fucking drip levels, right? And that's kind of unironic. If your faction shows this veneer of opulence and steadfast determination, true or not, it gives your reader this idea of what they'll function as in the story. If your faction is a bunch of fucking lunatics in the woods, that paints a very clear vision in the brain for your reader, right? unironically, aesthetics for designing factions and like groups as a whole is incredibly important. Sorry, I'm fighting my fucking body. As per usual, my massive amounts of bile are rising. Very human trait, I've been made aware. I say lying. I think doctors are still not fucking sure what does it. Did I take my medic? I did. Okay. What the hell is this? Anyway, designing the aesthetics of your factions is actually very important in order to portray to your reader with the least amount of time possible, with little effort, but still effectively conveying what this is all about. If you do it properly, at least, if your faction has like a hierarchy system stylized after flames, if they're like a fire cult or fire religion, like aspirants would be tinder, trainees would be sparks, devotees would be flames, like the bonfire pyre, and like outcasts would be embers to signify a burnt out flame, right? Or coal or something. That's kind of like you get the idea, right? What they style themselves after, what they venerate, what they care about. If you're uh, designing a location for them, and there's say still let's still base it off of this like fire cult, having them be like laid out in a circle to sort of with like a pulpit or maybe like I don't know the opposite word of a pulpit, a divot in the ground, I suppose, a crater or whatever, to like kind of represent a campfire. As shoddy and shaky as that analogy is, still kind of like conveys their whole thing, right? If they, wear bright colors with flowing like attachments to them, like little bits that are intended to trail away in the wind to look like flames licking at the sides of some container, that represents a whole thing about them. Even what times they operate. If they get up with the sun and go down with the sun, that's pretty cut and dry, right? You get it, is what I'm trying to convey upon you. The aesthetics of your faction actually genuinely do matter beyond just oh, here's why my readers can visualize that, or maybe my player can draw something for me. Teehee. It actually does. Like, your brain is designed to make assumptions. Look up why babies are racist. This is real. Babies are racist. Your brain is not them justifying racism. Your brain is designed to make assumptions and guesses based on what information it has. So giving your readers information to let them draw conclusions for themselves is a great way to have this faction stick in your players' minds, or readers' minds, or whatever the fuck. Um, I remember now how they interact with each other and the main character, because I'm reading. I gotta thank that guy again. Reading the notes helps. Um, why didn't I do that before? I'm so used to not doing them. Sorry, pal. Um, I think I covered how they interact with each other. I should also start checking these off. That's an idea. Um, I know I didn't talk about how they interact with the main character, so let's do that. Interactions with the main character are incredibly important. Whether, like, especially the first interaction, something, the first impressions are the most important. I don't know how true that is because I don't personally believe it, but it has credence to it. That the first one is memorable, but I wouldn't say it's the most important. Like, if you kill them the second encounter, that's pretty damn important. But I guess that's like an exception and shouldn't be counted. Whatever. How they interact with main character. Um, in openly cold uh, group is incredibly. Think of Eberron for the Dragonmark houses, like that setting. Could be a great baseline for you to read up on, get the ideas, and like kind of run with them. Also, Necromunda, as much as I hate fucking talking about Warhammer, why do you start? How did you do it? I actually punch myself in the jaw. Um, like House, fuck, House Kothar has lore. House Goliath has lore that also goes in with House Escher, right? They're intertwined lore, which is very interesting. House Vanderveer, I think it is called, is also very cool, especially with how it used to operate versus how it operates now. Wow, in-depth lore, shit changing. Doesn't really interact with the main character because I don't think the tabletop game, because there is Warhammer setting that isn't tabletop war game. Whereas TTRPG, I don't think it kind of goes into Necromunda and shit. Only Necromunda goes into Necromunda. That's like a kill team aspect. I'm gonna quickly pause, go use the bathroom, get water and shit. While I was up, I was still thinking about what is that second thing I was making a comparison to alongside Stalker. Still haven't fucking figured it out. My good, I remembered fucking finally. Holy shit. I'm gonna write it down so I don't forget. Because it's not time to talk about that, and I might later. Three exclamation points so I remember it's there, and also spacing it out from the other ones. That is the backslash, not the enter button, fuck's sake. There we are. Thank the Lord above. Okay, so, interacting with the main character, and I kept brushing myself off. Very important for a faction to do. Because that kind of, again, helps it not feel like you threw it in there for the sake of throwing it in there, making it feel like they have an actual purpose to the plot, which, again, they might not always, which is not necessary. However, it is great when they do have a purpose. What better, like, visual representation of the purpose than if they interact with the main characters of your story? Hard to get a better, like, direct, like, interaction there, no? With your story, rather. Whatever. Anyway, what was I all about? So, they shouldn't all immediately fucking hate your main characters and go, ah, you gotta prove yourself to get our allyship, right? Um, they could inherently be trustworthy, or yeah, that sounds like bad for some reason, but I mean, you know what I'm trying to say. Like, they could inherently be like, okay, yeah, sure, we can give you some help. Or they could have a bit more cloak and dagger reasons of if they're shown visually helping the main character, and then the main character succeeds in X thing, the fact that they were the first ones to throw the hat in the ring gives them more political clout, shit of that nature, right? They could even just hire your main character for whatever reason. From something as extreme as being a spy for political purposes to just being like a fucking secretary or something, right? All have great, like, the point I'm trying to make is like, all great reasons to hire the main character for whatever justification you'll give it. If it's a union, right, and your main character's a welder, that might be some inherent reason your main character would go out of their way to interact with the faction. Because not only does the faction have to interact with the main character, the same is true for the inverse. Your main character must interact with the factions. But like, not, you need to interact now. Big Brother is watching. Interact now, 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 now. But like, it's better if they meet and do shit like with or against or at the same time as one another. Interaction with one another and the main character is one of the most important thing of all. Now, why the fuck would your main character go out of the way to interact with them? One reason could be their influence they have, their impact on the world, right? Two points that should have been merged into one, but I forgot about that when I wrote them down. Your factions can have a lot of pull. I mentioned that earlier with guilds, historically speaking. I'm pretty sure that's true anyway, or maybe I've lied to you, but in which case this fantasy I live in is more interesting than the real one, and as such I will be subscribing to it wholesale. Now, your factions need not be all-powerful to have influence. If even they just have a small gathering with, like, the middle class, that's still influence. If even they have a small say in voting, that's still influence. If they are hated by the wider amount of people, guess what, baby? That's influence. Because, as someone who I adjusted my microphone, I don't know if it sounds like shit now. As someone who plays Team Fortress, actually I don't play that much because am still free to play, and my backpack's filling up with items, and I should really get a backpack expander soon. Taking a sip of water. Um, whenever something happens in the community, and Zesty Jesus makes a video, I've seen it before and I've felt it before. Immediately the popular opinion switches on a dime. Uh, Zesty's kind of a fucking asshole when he gets his points across, so nobody wants to listen to him right as he is. Usually, right as he is. There's not always that case. Anyway, because he's a fucking prick and nobody wants to listen to him, uh, Q, save TF2, rant here. I liked save TF2. I liked that it, was it fix or save that worked? Ah, it's been ages, I don't remember. Woo, no bots, hell yeah. Anyway, what was that all about? Uh, right. He's not very liked by the wider majority, and as such, whenever he makes videos, oftentimes the popular opinion will swap on a dime. If you have a faction that's whole thing is they're widely hated, if they say something or make a statement or stand behind something, the shift in public perception on X thing could be drastic. That's an interesting way to put it, right? Interesting way to have like a new conflict or just a new scene to work with. You see what I'm saying? Your factions need not be liked in order to have influence. Or even they could just be disliked while still having influence in general. Not like everybody fucking loves the DOJ or the Supreme Court and shit, right? They're still influential, however. So, your nobility. Nobility are typically seen as like the villains in fantasy stories for a reasonable reason. That's a stupid sentence, but they're not well liked. They're still influential. Public opinion doesn't really have a sway on like power. Strategy might. Ain't that a shame? Whatever. Uh, so these varying influence levels of these different factions can be pitted against one another for interfaction politics. Again, Cyberpunk great for this for gang warfare, like where they control why, etc. Someone that like controls chemtrade, that's big. Shout out House Escher. But these are things you should take into consideration when creating factions, because factions, well, they need people, right? How do they get people influence? How do they get their influence? Why do they still have their influence? Are they just old money, or do people just not give a shit? Right? Because sometimes people just don't give a shit. As such, they can shape the world around them, which I'm getting to that now. Either through just throwing money at issues, or, oh shit, suddenly the union got huge, and they can make demands on the corporate scale. How does that have a knock-on effect for everything? Because it would have a knock-on effect to everything. Not as big as not not everything has the equal amount of this is a huge knock-on effect, but it would be pretty considerable as a whole, you know? Yet more bile. It's fine, I'm winning. Don't worry. Let's see. Do they need to be plot relevant? I don't know if I mentioned this one already. Again, I should do check marks, but I don't want to do this now because, again, I don't remember which ones I've done. I'll look at it and be like, oh, check mark. Why did I put that there? Because I forget all the time. Do they need to be plot relevant? Not always, but they should still have a purpose, if even just a small arc. They don't need to assist. The Blacksmith's Guild doesn't need to go to war with your players to fight in a Illithid, but if they even just tune up their armor before the battle, that's a nice payoff. Fun fact, you don't need to give your players magical weapons in order to give them stat bonuses and shit. You could say, while you were asleep, some, uh, what are they, like, some members of the Blacksmiths Union or Guild who wanted to pay you back for all the good deeds you've done have tuned up your armor uh, while you were in your room. As such, for the next 2 battles, you may add a +1 bonus to your AC. Like, right? You see what I'm trying to say here? They weren't they weren't there side by side with your players, but they would certainly had an effect on them, a positive one at that. Or you could do the inverse, um, by giving more sway to the Church of Tiamat in the city, the blacksmith, a rogue blacksmith's guild members, you don't have to mention it by name, or you can if you'd like, snuck into your storage room and slathered your metal weapons and armor with magical sort of slime, rust monster slime that has deteriorated your weapons and armor, right? Shaping your plot with what they do. Speaking of shaping your plot with what they do, I remembered it. SCP. Security Mode Protect. I mentioned before how I adore SCP. Part of it is my beloved GOIs. UIU, my beloved. Oh, look at them trying so very hard. Oh no, they're dead now. Anyway, big part of SCP that many of you off-site fans may not know, unironically, many off-site fans do not know, are the GOIs, or groups of interest. They might know Chaos, but that's it. They might even know GOC. Look, they're learning. I'm better than you. I'm smarter, I'm stronger, I'm better, I am better. Um, a big part of the GOIs is how they interact with each other, and more importantly, with the wider SCP as a whole, SCP Foundation as a whole. Take, for example, UIU, my beloved. The FBI's UIU, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Unusual Incidents Unit, are by and large the laughingstock of the wider SCP narrative. They are consistently underfunded, understaffed, and underperform, especially in comparison to other paranormal or paranatural, however you want to call it, research, containment, destruction groups out there. Even Mana Charitable is better than them. Mana fucking Charitable. The UIU, what is the line I read that may or may not be canon? Welcome, boys, to the UIU. You're either here as a joke or because you pissed someone off that you really shouldn't have. This is the FBI's second least popular division, or something along those lines. Um, just like how the SCP has their own lingo, object class, risk class, distortion class. I still don't know those last two, by the way. Safe Euclid Keter. Keter, not Peter. Keter, the Hebrew word. I think I got that right. Fuck, let me look that up. Whoops, not X tab, Alt tab. Let me just make sure I got that right. Pronounce. Keter. Fuck you, yeah, Keter. Hebrew word crown. Keter. Uh, safe Euclid Keter. Mm-hmm. Uh, Terminated, I think, is a class. No, it was neutralized. I saw somebody use terminated once, but that was years ago, before it was standard. Safe Euclid Keter, neutralized, Thaumiel, Apollyon, and then the other esoteric classes which are not real. I close my eyes, I do not see. Right, and risk class, Vlam, none. I still don't know them. Um, right? And SCP is the word is its own version of lingo, or skip, which I'll continue to call it from now on because saying SCP is a lot more difficult than just going skip. So if you hear me say skip, that's what I mean. Like the Skip Foundation's got their own little terms in lingo: D class, MTF guard, MTF guard, NTF, which is a separate MTF, and then the various distinctions there within: Beta 7 Mass Hatters, Zeta 9 Mole Rats, uh, High 1 City Slickers. Fucking, I'm just gonna start saying names. I don't remember if I remember their numbers or Greek alphabet letter and number, I'll say it. Asimov's Lawbringers, Hear No Evil, uh, the Deep Feeders, Pony Express. I'm trying to flex, but it doesn't really work if I don't know the Epsilon 11 designated Nantel Fox, essentially the facility. Epsilon 6, Village Idiots, I think it's 6. And many which I cannot name right now. I used to know way more. Damn it. New 7, Hammer Down. Uh, Samsara, fuck, I used to know Samsara's number. They piss me off, by the way. They're fucking Mary Sue's in their stories. I don't like them. Use other. Side note, I hate in SCP stories when the guards don't like or get along with the researchers. Guard are a form of researcher in their own right, and they're at the very least fucking co-workers. They would at least be amicable with one another. They wouldn't be this outright hostility between guard and NTF and MTF and fucking scientists. Save that for D class and anybody, and save that for guard and MTF. The rivalry between guard and MTF goes unexplored, and that's a fucking shame. You do me a disservice. Fuck you. But where the Skip Foundation has their own lingo and terminology for themselves and other things they find, as does the UIU. I know they have cans for like anomalous objects, and I know there's one for anomalous creatures. I think sparklers is a word. Even the different GOIs have their own nicknames. Foundation's the suits, and I keep forgetting because it's been so long since I read a UIU file. Oh man, I should get back into it. I've been really stressed lately. What better way to de-stress than read some fucking Skip shit? Uh, G- the GOC, they have their own. Right, I actually didn't finish my UIU rant. The UIU rant has their own slang for shit, as well as their own operating procedures, which is more in line with the FBI. Who could have guessed? They go for actual like detainment and confiscation as opposed to researching, which is what the Skip Foundation is more focused on. Now, the GOC, I know it's a haha, the GOC fucking love killing shit meme. It's not true to an extent. Sure, the GOC is more willing to destroy, but they also do have research as a forefront of their whole goal. Whereas the SCP is a black site to every country as a whole that they're funded globally. The GOC has hands with the UN directly, so they're more beholden to the UN's laws and regulations and things of that nature. Sure, they absolutely have their own autonomy to a upsetting degree, but they are still, to an extent, beholden to the rules and regulations of the UN. This can lead to unique situations with unique canons, such as the Broken Masquerade canon, which is one of my favorite canons, or during awful events such as SCP-001. Which one do I mean? I won't tell you, but it's the one with flowers in it. If you get it, legend. Anyway, uh, are we cool yet? Who I hate. Um, are we cool yet? A group of anomalous artists. Another thing that you probably didn't consider, right? They have their own goals and motives, usually are pretentious assholes, and I hate them. Gamers Against Weed, who I think canonically hate Are We Cool Yet? And that's a lot of what they do. Chicago Free Spirit, which are bootleggers, anomalous of the anomalous variety, right? Who have interacted with the UIU and with the Three Portlands. Speaking of the Three Portlands, an entire fucking city-state dedicated to the anomalous, right? Has dealings with the UIU, Skip Foundation, and the GOC, I believe. You see the point I'm trying to draw here that I didn't with AWCY because I fucking hate them. Well, actually, no, I did with Gamers Against Weed, who are also kind of opposed to the SP Foundation because they're all fucking assholes, but whatever. Um, Also, Gamers Against Weed is like an ironic term. Uh, Sapphire and Fifthist, who are kind of directly opposed because Sapphire are a group of militant atheists that want to exterminate all gods on the world, whereas Fifthist Church is a whole thing about there's a whole like religion based on 5 and 5 point stars and has like precedence with anomalies. And the Church of the Broken God and the Sarkic cult, or the Nulkans, which is the better way to say, because Sarkic is canonically a slur, which have dealings with each other, like rivalries with each other, but come together a lot for many stories, with each have like allegiances with the Foundation in various ways. Usually the Church is a lot more like with them, but recently there's been a lot of shifts within the recipes to be like more pro-Sarkic, which fucking flash propaganda, but whatever. um, and the Church of the Broken God has relations with um, who do Asimov's Lawbringers focus? Anderson Robotics and Marshall Carter and Dark deal with everyone and no one, like no one like permanently. Wilson's Wildlife Foundation teams up with Men and Charitable, and oftentimes with SCP to take anomalous creatures off their hands, especially if they've been abused and need to be rehabilitated, which was tied in with one of my favorite files from the Herman Fuller Circus of the Disquieting, with the bear. You know the one I'm talking about. The point I'm trying to make here, after autistically rambling about one of my hyperfixations for a while, is, and don't feel bad because SCP has been around for years with thousands of people contributing to this huge web that has been weaved. These different factions, in this case GOIs, have in-depth relations with one another with specific reasons. I've not even covered all of them, not mentioning the international ones, which I actually have no idea about. These factions all have reasons to exist that can be traced back with a degree of accuracy. Again, no canon. I'm going to explain what no canon means for you people who have no idea what no canon means, fucking offsiders. Not racist or anything, just don't like. I'm not racist, I just don't like them. For all you offsiders doesn't understand what the no canon means, it doesn't mean nothing is true, or it doesn't mean that everything is true. It means it's up to your own personal discretion what is true. However, if something in an SCP file states it, the SCP file takes precedence over anything else. This includes tales and includes other files that mention the SCP. If you go to the number and it mentions something, and then you go to another file that mentions the SCP, that in the hierarchy takes precedence second because it was presumably made up, right? Um, However, it is true if you'd like it to be. But if you want to be like specific, technically a file is accurate above all else, right? Uh, 096, his jaw is 4 times wider than the average human's. If a tale says something else, if you'd like that tale to be true, sure. In the wider lore, not true, right? And again, it's technically just a loophole to excuse why there's a bunch of inaccuracies and contradictions, as opposed, alongside the excuse of the SCP hides things even from themselves. But technically, file above all else, then other files, then tales, then so on and so forth. Not that, sometimes the tales becoming more popular and then becoming the dominant thing does not replace previous. It's a little complex, a little stupid, but I think you get what I'm trying to say here. Is like there is no canon excuse is not an excuse because there actually is reasons for it that you can trace and then like unravel a ball of yarn if you'd like. Also, no, I forgot his Scarlet King cannot be stopped. By the way, all you power scalers who go X could clap Scarlet King, because A, I hate you. B, to stunt on your ass. No. And also yes. Not because of the no canon thing, but because the point of the Scarlet King is you can't fucking stop him, and currently he's locked behind reality, but he's slowly breaking out. If he breaks out, that's over. You can't do anything. Currently, yes, literally every single being wins against the Scarlet King because he is not in reality at all. If he breaks out, though, and again, he's not bound by reality and is actively breaking out by law of blood. The law of stone can't hold him up forever. Too deep. Not, oh, wow, deep, man. No, too, like, more in-depth aspects of Scarlet King that you may take as canon, but I like them. I like the law of blood and the law of stone. Currently is breaking into reality who cannot be stopped. Eventually, he will win. Um, unless law of blood can be enacted. I say it like it, whatever. Look into Scarlet, he's actually a very interesting entity all on his own right. Which is the point I was trying to make here that I failed to make is I think the could X character beat X SCP or X SCP concept is very reductive and I hate it. Scarlet King is not some. Scarlet King's not a wizard. He is the death of reality and should be treated as such because that is a more interesting idea than just who could kill him. Spoiler, fucking nobody. I think even at this point, even the Foundation would kill him if they could. Also, nobody knows about him outside of O5 and very, very, very few high-ranking researchers. Like Talaran, the motherfucker. Anyway. Fuck you, Bright. Director Shaw forever. Is he direct? He's a site director, right? Ah, whatever. Anyway, pulls up notes. Whoops. Notes. Influence lock. Oh, this one might be shorter because I instead of repeating myself repeatedly, I don't know what else to say. Purpose of the story, I think I covered that like fully. Interacting with the main character, covered that with each other. I absolutely got off tangent. So the point I'm trying to draw with the SCP GOIs, which I think I said already, whatever, I'll repeat it. Very, very, very important to establish their motives and more importantly, how they interact with one another. That's something forgotten about plenty. Factions should not only have dealings with the main character, they should have dealings with each other. And they shouldn't tell the main character all the time. Sometimes by dealing with this faction, you might be unknowingly dealing with the enemy, without realizing it. And that's a unique story that you can tell as a result, right? The Foundation doesn't like partnering with MC&D, and Managerable hates when the Foundation partners with MC&D because they go against everything Managerable does. Shout out Dado. Um, but sometimes they have to, right? That's a unique, interesting story to tell. Anyway, how they interact with each other, aesthetics. Mentioned that kind of poorly, but you get the idea. Influence. And, I think that's all I really have to say. I'm glad I really actually did find the SCP thing, because that was a pretty important thing, at least I believe. Um, Please keep in mind, I fully believe, genuinely, SCP is the golden standard when it comes to factions in your story. If you have the time, please read them, or at least use the Exploring series. He does a great job of going in depth. Please read them yourself. Don't be an off-siter, be an on-siter. Um, and use it as inspiration for your worlds when you're doing factions. It is great. Also, I would like to say I do actually really like the Stalker faction system. I don't really know how to explain that other than just telling you outright. Anyway, I fucking love SCP. A rant might be coming on that soon. Get hype.